Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. Broadcasting around the world and throughout the United Kingdom, we're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m, broadcasting on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on TikTok. What a day it is for us today, because, well, we're going to be talking about the crazy anti-UK antics of one Madam Sturgeon. We're going to be talking in depth about that. We're going to be looking at the law on the matter, and we're going to be trying to wargame what exactly might happen with this in the future. And also, of course, we have the end of our Crowdfunder, which will be ending tonight live on air as we speak at 7:30 precisely. It's been running for 28 days, and the good news is that we have reached our target. Our target was £2,500, and today at around 1300 hours in the afternoon, we achieved that target. So we're so grateful for that. But of course, it's still running until 7:30, and we have a stretch target of £3,000. And last time I looked, we were £175 short of the stretch target. So maybe we'll be able to make that by 7:30. We'll certainly be reporting on the success of it for you all. So now's your chance. If you'd like to contribute to that, please do fire in a fiver or a tenner to our Crowdfunder. There's the address on the screen, crowdfunder.co.uk/p/union 2022, and we'll also put the link up on the Facebook comments as well, so that you'll be able to see it. And no donation is too large or too small. And above all, we want to thank so much the absolutely tremendous people who have really stepped up, especially today. My goodness, we had a flurry of activity all day, and we really have boosted the amount, and some people have been given very generously. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. But every donation is generous for each person in their own particular circumstances, and we always say no donation is too large or too small for us, because goodness me, we have got our work cut out for us in the next year after the crazy antics of Sturgeon yesterday, really pushing the boat out, really bringing the country to the edge, really in many ways. And why is she doing that? Why is she acting like this? Well, we'll be speaking about that, and we'll be reading out your comments. Now, if you've got a thought on why she is doing that, please do fire it in. Please do fire in your thoughts to us. And you know, somebody put out a silly tweet this morning saying that Sturgeon has announced that the national vegetable of Scotland is going to be the carrot. And of course, we understand exactly what that's about, isn't it? I mean, she has given a carrot to her supporters. She must have an absolutely endless box of carrots, actually, and she pulls one out whenever the circumstances demand it. But yeah, the Scottish national vegetable is really going to be the carrot, if it hasn't been up until now. So anyway, enough of that nonsense. I'm also very shortly going to be speaking about the amazing day we had in Stirling on Saturday, just showing you what we've been doing. But let's get to some comments and say hello to some people. Good to see that Debbie was the first in today. Hope you're doing well, Debbie. Great stuff. And Adam and Frankie, hello. And Marcus. It is a lovely day out there. It is a lovely day, absolutely. And to Harry Brown, hoping a nice British evening to all unionists today. Isn't it good when the sun shines, when it's British summertime and the weather is fine? There's no other better place to be. Hello to Robert, who has a low opinion, understandably, of Sturgeon. Well, you're not the only person who thinks that, Robert, that's for sure. And to Stephen, good evening from Aberdeenshire, says Stephen, and Twigman. Always good to see Twigman and Alan Dawes. And good evening, Ray and TC. And Rita says, well done for hitting the mark. Ends at 7:30, and we'll be bringing you the full news of whether we've reached our stretch target. Can we reach our stretch target of 3k tonight? What an amazing thing. Let's annoy the gnats, okay? Let's annoy the gnats, because they're all excited today. I mean, they're just like wee children at Christmas time. They just can't believe it's so exciting for them. So they're just going to be upset if they find out that we have not only reached our target, but we've beaten it and we've hit our stretch target. So let's annoy the gnats. If you want to annoy the gnats, there's no better way than chipping in a fiver or a tenner to the work of A Force for Good, so we can continue to build the positive message. Paul says, there was a feel-good pro-British mood in the country following the Jubilee, and Sturgeon was deeply unhappy. Therefore, she has timed this referendum to demoralise British people. Absolutely. I said yesterday, there's this kind of demonic dedication that they have to just messing up things, and it's sad. It's sad that some people have that, but we have to fight back with our positive message of unity and solidarity, and that is so important that we do so. So let's talk, before we get into the Sturgeon situation, let's talk about what we did at Stirling. Now, the Scottish Nationalists were having a march on through the town. It was a 4.5 mile jaunt, so fair play to them for actually being able to get to one end and the other without suffering any significant casualties. That was very good, and we were glad that they managed to do that trek. However, we also were having a rally, which we happened to decide to stage along the way, and there was a good crowd of us. There was 28 of us, and I gave a speech for half an hour, and by the time I had finished, the Scottish Nationalists came past, and we counted them, and there was 432 of them. And we've got the video evidence of that. But of course they have to exaggerate, as they always do. They have to essentially lie. And they said there was 2,000 of them. Well, of course, thank goodness we were there, not only to share the good news that we were sharing, but also to count them and expose their lies. Anyway, the aim of our event was to celebrate our great British monarchy, from Bruce to Elizabeth. And we used the half hour before they passed us to educate about Queen Elizabeth's direct ancestor, to educate about Robert the Bruce's direct descendant, from Bruce to Elizabeth. That was our aim, to educate, and that was our theme, Bruce to Elizabeth, our great British monarchy. And we had an absolutely fantastic banner designed by our A1 banner designer, and let's fire up a picture of it there. Look at that. You won't see this if you're on TikTok. The best viewing experience is on YouTube, but there we've got the picture up, Bruce to Elizabeth, our great British monarchy. And look at the face there of Bruce is perfect, and there's the Queen smiling away also. And look at the colours of, aren't we so colourful? Aren't we so colourful? We are so lucky to be able to use these primary colours of red, white and blue, and really, really helps. And the yellow and red as well of the Royal Standard of Scotland, which is to say the lion rampant in the background there. That's 3 lion rampants in the background. Let's have a look at another pic. There we go. Now, that big flag that's flying there that I've strapped to the PA system, that's the Scottish Royal Standard of the United Kingdom. And that's the one that's quartered with 2 lion rampants, the Irish harp and the English lions. And we had 2 of those big flags flying as well as part of our monarchy theme. And you see the lady there in the left hand side, she's got a poster that's got a QR code on it, so some people were clicking on that to see where the QR code took them to. and it took them to our donate facility. And talking about donate facilities, the Crowdfunder is coming up, and it's going to be ending at 7:30. Can we reach our stretch target? So let's have another look at another picture. There you go. There's some shots from behind. Really nice colours. Look at that lion rampant there. We were really lucky with the weather. Really lucky with the weather, because not only was it relatively blue skies, it didn't rain, and there was this really nice wind flying up Port Street behind us, really giving wind to our sails, as it were. Really good. Okay, let's have another look at the next picture. There we go. Don't we have the most attractive looking activists? Absolutely. Sitting there ready. Let's go back to that other picture, please. Now, what these folk are wearing there, that's British Together hoodies. We're selling those at our Teespring store, where we have British Together designs, Scottish and British designs, and other such designs. And later you'll find the link to our t-shirts in the thread. Okay, let's move to the next photograph. There we go again. Great colours. Our activists always make an effort to turn up in suitable clothing. Really good stuff. Okay, next picture. Boom, there you go. Look at that. How's that for a soundbite? Sturgeon destroying Scotland from within. That's absolutely what's happening. Destroying Britain from within, if you want to develop upon that theme. Great. Next pic. There we go. That's another angle of our banner with the wind catching these flags very nicely. What a great team we have. What a great group of activists. And I just want to thank everybody so much for coming out that day during a rail strike, making their own way to stand up for the United Kingdom and to keep the British end up. As always, well done. Well done indeed. Robert Keating says, let me know your next rally, I'll be there. Well, we are going to be having... Well, let's talk just very briefly about that. We're going to be out with another street stall this Saturday. Now, we've been out every Saturday this month. We've had 2 street stalls in Glasgow. We've had 1 in Stirling. And as part of our rally on Saturday, we also had our table there as well, to act as a central area where people could come up and they could get our magazine, Happy and Glorious. So we've really been politically supporting the Jubilee this month. In the Jubilee month of June, we've been out on the streets of Scotland pushing that. Now, if you want that, you can get it at our shop, or you can pick it up free at our street stalls. So we're going to be out again in Glasgow this Saturday the 2nd, and I know there's 1 or 2 people watching who want the information about that. I'll speak to you about that tomorrow when I've got my head in a place to organise it. So that information will be coming to the people who are going to be with us on Saturday tomorrow. But then as for an actual rally or outdoors, we do have at least 1 more planned, maybe 2. So just simply keep watching our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and make sure that you're signed up. If you're signed up, you'll get our occasional email update, which we send out every 14 days or so. Sign up, and that will ensure that you get our material. Okay, that's at aforceforgood.uk/sign up, sign-up. There it is, aforceforgood.uk/sign-up. Make sure you're on that, and you will get information about us. So Ernest from Argentina says, why are we having a referendum again? Well, let's start to talk about that, and I'll break off in about 5 minutes so we can check what we have finally achieved at our crowdfunder at 7:30, folks. Last 2 or 3 minutes. So we heard yesterday that Nicola Sturgeon has asked the Lord Advocate. Now, the Lord Advocate is the senior law officer in Scotland. He's equivalent to the Attorney General in England and Wales. She's asked him to ask the Supreme Court if it would be legal for her to introduce a bill into Holyrood for a second referendum. That's extremely unusual behaviour, because I'm indebted to a viewer and reader on our Facebook page for a comment he made. His name's Peter. He knows who he is. He made a big long comment yesterday on the site, and he raised a very, very good point that the Supreme Court is not there to give legal advice. The Supreme Court is there to rule on something once a law has happened, or once some sort of thing has gone down. They're not there like your local lawyer around the corner to ask an opinion on. They're there to rule. They're there to give judgments on things that have happened. They're not there to give advice on potential hypotheticals. Okay? And so it may very well be that the Supreme Court will say, this isn't even for us to decide upon at this stage. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But what's normally the situation is that Sturgeon will, or the SNP, or whatever party is in power, will lay a piece of potential legislation known as a bill in front of Holyrood, and the presiding officer will look at this legislation and will immediately say whether that is in the competency of the Parliament to deal with. And the presiding officer will get advice from the Lord Advocate on that particular matter. And occasionally the presiding officer might just hand it back and say, no, you can't lay that before this Parliament. It's not appropriate. It's not within the competency of this Parliament to deal with. Or the presiding officer may say, well, I don't know, but I think it possibly is within the competency, and will allow it, and it will be debated, and it may be passed. And it's during that period that the British government might step in and say, no, we don't think that's right, so we're going to test this in court. It may be at that stage, or if it gets passed, immediately as soon as it's passed, the British government step in and say, whoa, wait a minute, we don't think that's appropriate. We're going to take that to the Supreme Court. It's usually when the law has been passed that it then goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can then look at the law, which will be slightly different from what it was when it was introduced, because it will have all sorts of amendments and bits taken out of it and bits changed and so on and so forth. So you've actually got the final passed law, and the Supreme Court looks at it and goes no, or goes yes. But what Sturgeon is asking is for the Supreme Court to make a decision before the law has even gone to Parliament, before it's gone through the process of amending, and make a judgment on that. Well, I'm not sure they would. And we do have a precedent for this. We do have a precedent that they'll turn it down and they'll just say, this is hypothetical. We can't make a judgment on this because the law has not been passed. Because last year there was a case that came before the Court of Session in Edinburgh, and it was called Keatings versus the Lord Advocate. And this was a Scottish nationalist who asked the court to rule on whether the Scottish Parliament had a right to bring forth a referendum on separation. And it's worth just reading Lady Carmichael's judgment on that. 5th of February 2021, Keatings versus the Lord Advocate. In a written judgment issued today, Lady Carmichael dismissed the action. She ruled that Mr. Keating's arguments had been hypothetical and premature, and that he did not have standing to bring the case. Well, let's concentrate on the hypothetical and premature bit here. She stated that the consideration by a court of proposed legislation would normally be hypothetical and premature at any point before it was in its final form and passed by Parliament. Until passed, bills could fall or be amended. Exactly, that's Parliament's job to do that. However, again, the court would not entertain hypothetical, premature or academic questions or cases where the pursuer or petitioner did not have standing. So, hypothetical and premature prior to it even being passed by the Parliament. That's what the Supreme Court is going to look at. And I would imagine that's what they'll say. Now, if they say that, where does that leave her? Is she going to risk laying it before Holyrood? Is she going to risk being turned down by the presiding officer? Is it going to be passed and then struck down by the Supreme Court? So it's all up in the air at the moment. And all we can know for sure is that nothing is certain. Because many of us, myself included, think, oh, you know, the Supreme Court, they'll strike that down, blah, blah, blah. But who knows what they'll do these days, because we're living in ridiculous times and anything could happen. Anything could happen. You know, we put out an email update yesterday and we said, and I'll just read this in full. In making their decision, the Supreme Court judges should consider the potential consequence of a referendum on this matter. The result could lead to the dissolution of the United Kingdom. Surely a matter so grave requires the active participation of the actual Parliament of the United Kingdom itself. The actual Parliament of the country that somebody is trying to destroy. Surely it is not for a devolved part of the UK, which owes its existence to the Central Parliament, to go ahead on its own behalf. After all, the United Kingdom is not a federal system. We are a unitary state. And that's the sensible, normal way that you would look at it. But if some of the judges hold to the incorrect notion of the United Kingdom being merely some sort of loose amalgamation of a union of nations, rather than a fundamental nation of unions in and of itself, a nation whose continued existence must obviously be protected by its common parliament. A unitary state that's ultimately governed by one central British Parliament. If they don't hold to that, then who knows what nonsense they'll come up with? Who knows what nonsense they'll come up with? So basically, we cannot take anything for granted, and we cannot rely upon the judges to make the right decision. Let's hope that they do. Let's hope that they've read Happy and Glorious. Let's hope that they've read Do More Together. Let's hope that they've read 10 Years Strong and they're like, do you know what? We need to call in Alistair McConnachie and A Force for Good here for the proper constitutional understanding of the situation. If they do that, we're home and dry. There's nothing to worry about. But if they don't really have a clue, like most metropolitan liberals in London, then I'm afraid it's, batten down the hatches and get ready. So we're never taking anything for granted. Now, what time is it? It's 7:36. Now, I don't know what the Crowdfunder total is. Do we have a total in the Crowdfunder? £2,910. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, there was a period we were a little bit concerned that we weren't going to get what we really do require for the next 5 months, but that was this morning. We breathed a big sigh of relief and look at the additional funds that we've made. Another £410. Absolutely fantastic. So that's going to ensure that we're going to be able to continue as an organisation right up until our next crowdfunder, which will be our Yule Britannia crowdfunder at Christmas time. So all I can say, folks, is a very, very big thank you to everybody who took part in that. Also, some of you, of course, have donated. Well, here's the thing. Some of you have donated by PayPal, and some of you have donated by one-offs. So when we actually add the PayPal and the one-offs, as well as some checks which we haven't been able to pick up yet, we're definitely over the £3,000 barrier. That's really good. So we hit it. We hit the stretch target once we add in the PayPal donations, the one-off donations, and the checks. We'll give you an exact figure in the next week or so when we've tallied all that together. But brilliant stuff. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you also to people who are helping in other ways, people who are coming out on the streets with us, people who are part of our monthly Union Supporters Programme, people who give us one-offs through the course of the year, people who buy our merchandise. Thank you to you all the supporters, and especially all the supporters who share our work as well, who retweet, who keep the message going there, and who stand up for us in all sorts of ways. Thank you very, very much. That's great. So that's fantastic news. Fantastic news. So happy and so proud of our wonderful people, and especially a big thank you to our directors and team at A Force for Good, who make all of this happen and who have been really, really pushing this month in order to get that figure. Thank you so much. Let's talk about this day in British history. So, on this day in British history, today's the 29th. And we speak about British history matters because we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we are. And we don't know where we are if we don't know where we've been. So 29th of June 1801, would you believe this was the first ever census in Britain in 1801? And any guesses what the population of Britain was in the census taken on the 29th of June 1801? Okay, 8,800,000. That's the population of Britain in 1801. That's not very long ago. That's 221 years ago. 8,800,000. Well, as it happens, there was an article released yesterday about the census in England and Wales, and let me see if I can bring it up here. And it gave the estimated population figure for the United Kingdom today. Yeah, the population of England and Wales has risen, this is England and Wales, to 59,597,300. If you believe it's as low as that, I've got a Rolls Royce I can sell you. Anyway, it grew by more than 3.5 million since the previous census in 2011 and has more people over 65 than ever. When added to published census figures for Northern Ireland and official estimates of the Scottish population, because an official estimate is the best that we're going to get, I'm afraid, given the absolute disaster of the Scottish National Party's ridiculous census that they couldn't even do. Added to that, you're looking at 67 million people in the United Kingdom. That's up from 8,800,000 in 1801. 67 million. The rise is one of the biggest since the census began. No kidding. Well, the rise is one of the biggest because the borders are basically open to anybody who wants to walk in, literally, or swim in. What a disaster. What a disaster. All of that's a big thing that's going on, but, you know, it's not like separation's going to solve that, because the Scottish nationalists, in their stupidity, want even more, okay? They want even more people coming into Scotland. They can't even manage, they can't even govern the number of people who are here right now. And they just want to more and more and more people. And, you know, I'm blaming the SNP, but I'm also blaming the absolute metropolitan liberals who totally dominate the political class in London. They're not wanting to do anything about it either. So that's another thing that's going to happen. But who knows how that's all going to come together. Anyway, that was that. What else happened today? In the 29th of June 1855, the Daily Telegraph was established for the first time, and apparently it was a result of the publisher's anger over the Crimean War and his desire to express, presumably, his opposition to it. The Daily Telegraph, which was formed in order to express opposition to the Crimean War. That's really ironic when you think today the Daily Telegraph is one of the biggest boosters of war in that particular area. 1905, the Automobile Association was set up by motorists angered by police harassment and angered at speed traps. In 1905, what was a speed trap in 1905? Like, you can't do more than 7.5 miles per hour. I would be angered at that, quite frankly. Various other things on this date. But those are the three ones that really stuck out. You know, they really stuck out. Let me read out this really, really good letter from a unionist to the Secretary of State for Scotland, expressing this writer's irritation with what's happening. Dear Sir, I am a staunch unionist and hater of the SNP. I feel I have to introduce my letter like this, as I have still not quite got over the shock I got from a reply you sent me to a letter I sent a few weeks earlier. I had made my opposition to devolution plain, and I thought crystal clear. I had made my opposition to more powers crystal clear, and yet your reply, quote, reassured me that more powers were coming Scotland's way. The worst political news I could possibly hear. Because as we know, more powers coming Scotland's way means more powers to the SNP, just to mess things up. I read an article in the Daily Telegraph recently about how the Unionists in Northern Ireland feel let down and seriously doubt the British government's commitment to the Union. It could have been Scotland that they were writing about. Their original idea was that Scotland would be part of the UK with an assembly with some devolved powers. Instead of that, it has been allowed to exceed the original intentions and now acts like a semi-independent country, doesn't it just? And people don't know any better. You see, people don't know what's meant to be the proper constitutional relationship in a devolved state. And the people who set the thing up in the first place don't even know either. It was just a complete dog's breakfast, quite frankly. And the letter writer goes on, the civil service in Scotland is a branch of the British civil service and could and should be overruled by them. Yet it seems to act like an arm of the SNP, as does the Scottish media, academia and much of big business. I understand that in the present period of SNP rule, since 2007, the civil service in Scotland has never once pulled up the SNP on their spending plans, yet in the same period their counterparts in London have done so over 100 times. Evidently, we now face a black hole of £3.5 billion pounds, that is, 3.5 billion. Is the British government treating this with apparent indifference? Whether it's buying ferries, organising a census, running education, the NHS or anything else, they can be guaranteed to make a mess of it. Sturgeon is allowed to travel abroad to meet foreign politicians and claim to speak for Scotland. I like this bit. Over 20 non-entities in her so-called quote-unquote government are provided with chauffeur-driven cars. Over 20 non-entities, that's so funny, in her so-called government are provided with chauffeur-driven cars. The list of demands made and liberties taken is endless, as is the supine response of the British government. The SNP is a driven, focused, professional and well-funded organisation, enjoying the advantages of campaigning from a position of strength. Visible opposition to them depends on a few amateurs who lack everything but dedication and enthusiasm. Is the British government still unionist? If so, why does it persist with this? Nothing to do with me attitude seems to be its modus operandi. Intervention, of course, could be overdone, but you're certainly not at risk of that. For example, in a matter like this present referendum nonsense, someone needs to point out the importance of a large and lasting consensus among the population, not a majority of one at a time of the SNP's choosing. As Scottish Secretary, you must be deeply involved in all of this. I hope you can reassure me. Excellent and very well said, sir. Very well said. And thank you to the person for sending that to me. Thank you indeed. Now, we're going to be out again this Saturday. If anybody wants to join us, please do send an email to contact@aforceforgood.uk and we'll fill you in with the details of where we're going to be. At contact@aforceforgood.uk. So we've been out every Saturday and we'll be out this Saturday. Kenny says he gets angry about them having pretend embassies abroad. It's totally ridiculous, isn't it, Kenny? Absolutely ridiculous. Alan, the letter was a private letter that I was given the opportunity to read out. It was to the Secretary of State for Scotland from a supporter of A Force for Good. What would it be like if the Secretary for Scotland was a Scottish nationalist? Gosh, would we notice any difference? Yes, the reassurance was, don't worry, more power's on the way. This person had complained to the Secretary of State saying we shouldn't have that because it's just going to be a disaster. And he comes back and goes, I want to reassure you. And you have to ask, do these people even read their letters? Because I'll tell you something, right? This is an interesting point. Apparently some guy called Jeremy Hunt has written a new book. And apparently he used to be the Secretary of State for Health under David Cameron's government. And the Daily Express, you know, how they run a section of your book. If you've got a book, they haven't actually run a section about a wee book for the Union yet, but I'm still living hope that they will. However, they're running Jeremy Hunt's new book, and he does make a very interesting point here. He says he was at Margaret Thatcher's funeral, and the Bishop of London stood up to deliver the eulogy. And he quoted a letter that the former Prime Minister had received from a 9-year-old boy, to which she had replied personally. Sitting behind Gordon Brown, Tony Blair and John Major, Jeremy Hunt realised with a jolt that in 7 months as Health Secretary in David Cameron's coalition government, he had not seen a single letter from an NHS patient, let alone replied to one. That moment in April 2013, as Britain's longest-serving Secretary of State for Health, as he recounts it, was a light bulb moment that reverberates to this day. He discovered that his department had a correspondence department manned by 50 civil servants, and yet he had not seen a single letter that they had been dealing with in his capacity as Health Secretary. And so he asked that from that day on, one letter from a member of the public should be on his desk every day when he arrived at work, to which he would send a handwritten response. They were eye-opening letters and sometimes horrifying, he writes in his new book. In other words, in that particular instance, the civil service wasn't letting the Secretary of State even see any of the letters, and the Secretary of State wasn't even asking, oh, by the way, I've been Secretary of State now for 7 months, has MD written to me? I wonder if MD's written to me. What's going on? What's going on? So let's call this to an end. Let me say once again, thank you so much for everybody who has made this amazing crowdfunder total that we got in tonight. £2,910 to fight Sturgeon and to stand up for the United Kingdom. Great stuff. Cheers, Kenny, as well. Just remains for me to say, folks, we will be back next Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing you there. For now, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. See you next week.